All right, Matt. Most multiplayer games, people try and become the first guild to like slay a dragon or something like that, defeat the final boss. I was surprised that you went the route of being the first person to sleep with 100 pals in Palworld. Just because you can doesn't always mean that you should, you know?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
But
well, we have different goals in life, you know. Some people want to, scale Mount Everest. Other people want to hang out with their pals, right?
hang out. We'll call it hang out with your pals. It's just a weird thing to add to your Wikipedia page is all I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, we all, like I said, we all have different goals in our life.
Yeah. So how you enjoying well, before we get into Palworld, I thought we would just address that the podcast is kind of moving locations. If you're listening to the podcast on any of the actual podcasting services like iTunes and what's that other one? Spotify. That one there.
Yeah.
Then you're fine. But if you're watching on YouTube, it's going to be shifting over to my channel. The reason for this is that Matt and we're busy people. We're very important. We don't quite have the amount of time to build up an entire second YouTube channel. We're trying it out, but it's a little slow. So we're going to bring it over to my channel. And so anyone who hasn't been watching over on the Level With Me podcast channel, welcome to the podcast over here. Hope you guys enjoy it. And for everybody else, welcome back. Not much is changing other than the location. We're still gonna, beautiful. Still gonna be talking about silliness, Matimi0's
video games, life,
Matimi0's
love.
debauchery. Yeah, it's gonna be a constant subject of the channel. Speaking of which, how have you been enjoying playing with your pals in Palworld?
It's great. Actually, very, very fun. So have you played Palworld at all?
Just enough to make a little bit of content with it.
Okay.
Dabbling, basically.
Okay. Well, it's as if you haven't been living under a rock, it has completely taken over the internet and taken over the world of gaming. I think it got up to 1.4 million concurrent viewers on a Monday.
Yeah, concurrent players
on Steam.
Yeah, concurrent players on Steam, and I think it passed 1.5 or something crazy.
Okay,
it's gone nuts.
It's hard to keep track of it because it just keeps going up and up and up and up. It is the second highest concurrent out of a paid game ever on Steam. First place going to PUBG like 6 years ago when that originally came out.
Yeah.
PUBG took over the world and had like 3 million concurrent, which is just absolutely bonkers. But the fact that this has now surpassed Elden Ring, Baldur's Gate 3 for concurrent, and those were literally game of the years, just goes to show that there may be a market for a Nintendo, or not Nintendo, a Pokemon style battle game on PC that actually plays reasonably well.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure this out because it is a weird anomaly. Palworld, for jumping into it, because you see the trailer and you're like, it's like weird Pokemon with guns, basically. You're like, this seems like such a weird kind of cash grab type game. But you get into it and you're like, this is actually fairly enjoyable. Like it's not a bad take on the whole Pokemon franchise. And it made me think about it in that Pokemon hasn't really evolved its formula for like how long?
Evolved.
Oh yeah. Well, only
of course
3 evolutions.
Of course you did that on purpose.
I did.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean. The game has not really. If you've played the card game, if you've played the actual Nintendo games, they're pretty basic, and they haven't really done much with it beyond that. And Palworld's like, hey, what if we just took Pokemon and did something more, like made it a modern game? And it turns out everybody's on board with that concept.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree. For those that haven't played it, though, it is not really Pokemon because it at its core, it's a survival game. Like you are
you don't
building
have
a base.
Pokeballs, you have Pal balls, and you don't have
Pal
Pokemon
spheres. Thank you very much.
Oh,
you get
whatever.
The Giga sphere, the Ultra sphere. Yeah.
Totally different than Pokemon.
Yeah. It definitely has that Pokemon behind it, but at its core, it's a survival game. So you're going to be doing all your survival stuff, building a base. You're going to be having different upgrades. You're gonna get like, you start off with like a spear, then you get like a crossbow, and then it moves into like actual weapons like guns and stuff like that. I now have a double barrel shotgun, which is just freaking ridiculous.
Yeah.
Walking up to like this Goliath thing and just just double barrel it into the face.
You're Ash Ketchum with a double barrel shotgun, basically.
It's so silly. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But then on top of it, it has like so many other systems involved with it.
It's an impossible game to describe in a sentence, because you're like, it's Pokemon with guns, but also survival and base building and like automation, and
you can really tell that they used other inspiration very God, what's the word I'm looking for?
Unashamedly.
They were very unashamed with their inspiration. So you can see influences from Breath of the Wild. You can see it obviously from Pokemon. Survival games like the Ark survival series. You can see Minecraft, Elden Ring in there. There's literally like Elden Ring inspiration in this game. There's like little like dungeons that you go to where it's like a big circle, and there's a smaller circle in the middle with a glowing part, just like in Elden Ring. Like literally just like it.
It's sort of like, it's like two kids got together and they're like, wouldn't it be cool if like Pokemon, but then it was like Elden Ring and also Zelda, and then actual competent developers came together and they just wrote down all that stuff and made that game to like a decent level. It's very wild. I'm kind of blown away by this being the next big thing. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, we can get into the competent developer part here in a minute, because apparently they weren't. Apparently they were like, this is a company that did not have any experience like at all making games, and they got somehow got like very lucky.
Yeah.
So they didn't even know about like really like basic game development terms, and they were all like watching tutorials on how to make stuff. So we'll get to that in a minute. But
fair enough.
Yeah, the game. There's just so many systems involved that are it's just satisfying to go up, capture a pal, and then go and see what that pal is good for. Because sometimes they're good for your base. You can automate it so that they are trying to farm, or they will make stuff for you. So you can automate a lot of it. It's a little janky. I like
that they're called pals too. They're like, definitely not slaves. They're pals. They're your friends.
Well, they're farming, and then they, you take care of them.
They like working for you because they're your pals.
I like how I have like a barracks barn for them as well. It's just rows of beds. It's like, all right, go to sleep, everyone, because we're gonna be up early in the morning for some more work.
This is a friend whip. It's a friend whip. They like it. They enjoy the act of being whipped.
There's literally like a command deck that you can build where you can increase how much they work.
Oh, nice. So you're like yelling at them.
You can really push them if you want to.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's such a weird game. The fact that, so I have to kind of like wrap my mind around what you just said, which is like, these are kind of a lot of first time devs here.
Yeah.
What I feel like that almost goes to show is like, bringing fresh talent or fresh ideas. I don't even know if I call them fresh ideas, but sort of a different way of thinking or approaching game development can often be the thing that gives you the next big, because you got these professional jaded game developers who maybe haven't had a good original idea in a long time because they're just kind of creatively burnt out, and then you bring in these new guys that are like, how do we make stuff shoot things? Let me Google
or they just got really lucky, at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, but to make a multiplayer game of this scale is incredibly difficult.
Yeah,
they didn't just difficult. Like hit the right button and it worked.
But the fact that all these systems somehow work together is what I mean by lucky. Yeah. Like, it's nonsense when you really get down. You can literally get an upgrade. You can get an upgrade, which turns a toucan into a grenade launcher, where he fires eggs out of his butt at the enemy, and like it deals massive damage. You can use
as it would.
You can. There's like a flamethrower. It's just a PAL that has the ability to basically, you pick it up and you start using it like a flamethrower. One thing that I really appreciate is that if you want to, you can like get really deep into upgrading and figuring out what the perfect pals for you are. So each one, when you capture it, will come with like perks. Some of them are negative, some of them are positive. The positive ones you obviously want. Now, when you're first just capturing them, it's pure luck, right?
Right.
But then you can breed them. So if you get two pals
I
that are
didn't
the
even
same
know
type,
about the breeding set. It's so many games. It's
So-
many games.
exactly. So you get two of like, they have the perks that you want. Then you breed them, and they have a high percent or a chance of getting their children. They make an egg, and the egg you can then incubate, which then has a chance
These are
have those
are not slaves. These are your friends. They're your pals.
They're your pals. Thank you.
You breed
And
and
they will
take
have a
their
chance.
offspring to then fight for you.
Yes. They will then have a chance to have those perks. So some of them can be used for offense. Some of them can be better for your base. Like they lose their sanity less so that you can, make work them harder and all that stuff. So you can really kind of tailor not only your base building and your the automatic part aside of the things, or you can have them for combat. And then you can condense them. So once you've collected a certain amount, you can then take the power of the other pals, squish them together, and then put them into another pal to increase their star rating up to, I think, 4 or 5 stars, and then they also become more powerful. So there's actually a decent amount of depth into that if you really wanted to dive in.
It's really crazy. It does make you also wonder about just like, has anyone thought that Pokemon is basically just like glorified dog fighting, essentially?
I mean, yeah, no, absolutely. 100%. I'm sure everyone has kind of had that
Pikachu's
thought.
like, you're my best friend, Ash. And he's like, go fight that giant bear.
yeah.
He's like, what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why? Why am I doing
I
this?
said fight it. In fact, that's all I really want you for. It's just fighting in this tournament.
And friendship. There's friendship.
Friendship and lessons. Yeah. But it's really mostly about the dog fighting tournaments. Yeah.
And combat.
Yeah. But Ash is a good guy.
Of course.
Not a poacher or somebody who trains woodland creatures to fight to the death in an arena.
Well, they don't, at least in Pokemon, they don't. They always get knocked out. They don't actually die. But in Palworld, they die. And it's really funny, too, because when they die, they basically turn into giant balloons. So you'll take out, just this huge pal. And then it just bounces around, kind of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a fun death. Yeah, it's just a fun game that is not sinister in any way.
Not at all.
Yeah.
There's descriptions on a lot of them. And some of them are pretty dark. Like there's one that's basically just big hands, and it's got like a tiny little like round body. And it was used as a form of execution where it would just like rip off like limbs and stuff like that. So that was one of the descriptions. It's like, oh, what a fun little tidbit about this pal. I can't wait to use him in battle.
It's like this. It's like a fun cartoon world, and then you're just like, what kind of nightmare society is this?
Yeah.
So what do you think? Game of the year already? It's we're not even out of January.
Right now, I would say that it is the game of the year. Yeah. But that's because it's January.
Yeah. And all the good games are coming out. Summer, holiday season. Yeah.
I do think that even if it's not game, I don't expect it to be game of the year. I don't.
Sure.
But even if it's not, I think it will get recognized probably at like Game Awards and stuff like that, or at least people will be talking about it for a long time. I don't think it's going to be a game that will stick around in the public's mind for like months and months on end. It's not going to have the same longevity as Baldur's Gate 3, because if you go look at Baldur's Gate's stats on Steam, they're still ridiculously high for a single player.
Do you think this is going to kind of fall off in the way that like say Valheim did, where it's like it's fun, it's cool, everybody's talking about it, but it doesn't it probably won't have the lasting factor in the sense that like you're going to grind all of your pals up to their max levels and do all that stuff, and then you'll be like, okay, next game.
I think it's also dependent on how frequently they update, because apparently they're going to come out with a roadmap soon. And if it does get a lot of updates, then it might have some legs to it, because they're going to be adding PvP.
Well, these guys just made a buttload of money. Holy smokes.
Which
they
on the one
were
hand,
not expecting that.
Which on the one hand could infuse and give them a lot of incentive to keep pushing it. Or it could also be like, all right, we made our money, we're out, kind of a deal. Because that does happen sometimes. But related to Valheim, I think the reason why I still think Valheim is a fantastic game, and I still think
it's still got a decent player base, to be honest. I think it's not like tiny or anything.
And I think it's had an impact on survival games because it was so large when it launched. but it just didn't get very many updates, and so it kind of petered out because like why would I return when nothing's really changed for like an entire year? So if Palworld adds PvP, they flesh out their their systems, make it a little bit less jank in certain situations. I think people could be playing this for a long time, but I don't expect it to be like having like a long tailwind where it just doesn't die, or it keeps this millions of players for an extensive amount of time.
You know, what you said about Valheim not really getting a lot of updates made me think about a conversation I was having with a friend recently where we were talking about early access titles that do really well, in that from a business standpoint, it almost makes sense to just run away with the money and not reinvest it in the game, because you're not going to see that money come back, or the odds of it coming back are less than just keeping it and making a new game with that money. So yeah, it's like Palworld from the business standpoint. At this point, it almost makes sense for them to just be like, all right, deposit that check and just move on. Yeah, throw out a couple of updates so people can't yell at you too much, and then move on from there. Yep. Because, yeah, it's like, okay, well, what are you going to do? Sink millions and millions and millions into post-launch content as the player base gets lower and lower? I mean, it probably would make them money, but it's just one of those things in the business world where I think a lot of the times they go, oh, early access game made a ton of money. Do we really need to do we really need to do the second half of development, or should we just move on and do something else at this point?
It's one of the reasons why I now judge games in early access as if it's a release, because I'm so tired. I'm so tired of early access titles where it's like, trust us, it'll get better.
I think everybody does now.
Now it's like, this is launch. You've launched the title. Your early access tag is fine. Like you can be like, yeah, this is still the early build, but I'm going to judge it as if it's a release. Like, this is a paid product. We've paid for it. It's not a shield like it was. At least I don't consider it a shield like it is.
Yeah, it's definitely getting abused by a lot of developers to a certain extent. I won't say it's always is, because sometimes devs really just are like, we need more money to keep going, so we need to start selling it now. I don't think any developer wants to launch a game in early access, because I mean, if you're working on a cool product, you want people to see it in its best state,
in its finished state.
You don't want them to load up your last 2 years worth of work and like have it bug out on them and then be like, oh, this sucks, and you're like, yeah, I know, sorry, like it's still work in progress.
No, I do agree, but that doesn't mean as a consumer I'm going to give them a ton of leeway when it's like, this is still a paid product. But I understand. I got you. So thankfully, Palworld is, I mean, there's bugs for sure. Like, there's pathing issues for your pals. They'll get stuck on stuff and they'll just like stay hungry. And you're like, why are you so hungry? Why are you not working? Oh, it's because you're on a rooftop somehow and you need to move them around. So it does have bugs, but for the most part, it's a pretty well-made game, and it accomplishes what it needs to accomplish.
Yeah, given the level of competence of the developers, the bugs themselves are not like horrible, considering what AAA developers launch these days. You're sort of like, well, this is pretty competent for an early access for sure.
Though the further along you go, the more you start to notice it is more early access, and it is not a complete title.
It starts to break down a little the further you get away from home base.
A little bit. So like the later zones feel a little devoid of life. I mean, the early zones kind of feel that way too, but like there's like a big fire and a ice like continent, you know, like the map is humongous. It is way too big in my opinion. It is giant. Now, if you're playing PvP and you got 32 other people and each person has their own base and they have multiple bases, then I guess that would make more sense for why it is so large, because you would need that space and it would all be filled up with, player buildings. But when you're just by yourself, it is a lot of traveling just to get from one side over to the other. And then when you're flying around in what is a really cool looking area, but with nothing in it, you're like, oh, this is probably something that they're going to be working on later on, because they've got like these giant castles and there's like a couple of pals wandering around, but it's just like a really cool castle. But it's like, well, what is this? It just looks like a castle.
Like, coming soon.
Yeah, it kind of does have a coming soon vibe to it. There's also like a giant Erd tree from Elden Ring out in the distance, and you can see it, and it looks like you can go there, but you can't. According to my chat, it's like completely closed off. So it does start to break down in that respect. Also, the grind gets crazy towards the end too. I want to say it took me like 6 hours to get like only a couple of levels.
Dear
and
God.
and then you have your spheres, right?
Mhm.
That's the way you capture everything.
Yeah.
And they start to get really expensive to make, or at least I find them to be expensive. Like you have to get a lot of materials just to get it. And then on top of that, the higher level pals that you're trying to capture take a lot of balls to actually capture because it's percentage based. So you try to
Right.
get down their health. You throw the ball, and it'll be like a 10% chance. You're like, what do you mean it's a 10% chance? Like,
Yeah.
I'm their level. I'm using the highest level ball that I can. Like, what more do you want from me? So it just feels like you're throwing resources away.
It's also stupid when your pal kills the pal that you're trying to capture, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm glad I found this thing that I was trying to capture, and then you killed it. I guess I'll just go find another one.
Just find, which you will, because there's a ton of them.
But it is annoying. It's sort of, there's a couple oversight mechanics. So we're all going to be playing Palworld for the next 10 years, it seems like. You know what? Another game that's kind of, it's one of those games that you hear on paper, you're like, that's definitely going to be a bad game, but it actually looks like it's going to be a good game, is the new Indiana Jones game.
Oh, yeah. I
don't
know how I feel about that one, because graphically it's great. It has Troy Baker as the lead, who is definitely trying to sound like Harrison Ford and sort of achieving that to some extent.
I mean, you're never going to get Harrison for the video game. He doesn't give a shit.
You're not. Yeah, of course not. He really doesn't. But yeah, it looked okay. What did you feel?
It looked higher quality than I would have thought from a Indiana Jones game. Just like, because you expect the standard third person, whatever, movie studio makes the next Avengers game, the next Marvel game,
isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is you expect that sort of standard third person approach, and just you run around and collect a bunch of gold or some crap, and like that's the game. It just looks, I don't know, it looks unexpected. I'm curious about it because there's been a bunch of decent first-person games based on movies, like the RoboCop game and stuff coming out. And I'm like, could Indiana Jones fall into that same vein? But it is a bigger studio, so we'll see.
I'm a little concerned about the gameplay, because there's like some, like you're using your whip, and but it's like, what is the core gameplay loop going to be? I haven't looked too deeply into it, though.
Yeah, it's 50 Shades of Grey. Actually, you just, with the whip the whole time.
Oh, okay. Well, then sign me up.
Yeah, I figured you'd be into it with all that whipping your pals you've been doing. Get back to work.
It's funny. There's a pal so they number all the pals.
Yeah.
This is just real brief. It's because it's funny. And so the 69th pal is called a love ender. It's got like a giant heart on its chest. And it basically is a pal that likes to get naughty with other pals, but only recently has it shifted its gaze towards humans for its debauchery. So I do think,
I mean, this is where you got your Wikipedia note from.
No.
We know about what's going on with you, Matt.
So yeah, there is, like, as I said, there are some pretty darker or adult themes in Palworld, and that is one of them.
Yeah. Shall we shift gears and talk about the end of competitive gaming as we know it?
Sure.
Oh, you didn't know that competitive gaming's over? It's going to be over in the next...
Well, it's been over for me for a while because I'm getting old, but yeah.
Sure. But if you were a young Matimi0, say Matimi0 in his prime, who was like, I'm going to be the best Battlefield gamer there ever was.
Yeah, there's a lot of prize money in Battlefield.
Yeah. Or Counter-Strike, whatever. Take your pick.
No, I feel you. I have a feling this has to do with those monitors.
Yeah. So we could throw all the blame at MSI, but let's be honest, this is coming from a different company in the next couple months anyway, right? Somebody else is going to have the same product. This is a new monitor from MSI that's got an AI chip built into it, and the AI chip can take the visual information from the screen, so it's not interfacing with the computer in any way. It just takes the raw visual data.
Okay.
I believe it can interface with the PC too, to a degree, but it can take that raw visual data and audio data, so sound coming through your monitor as well, and it can then basically give you aids in game to help you. And so assistance. And at the very basic level, they showed off some stuff where like it could give you a warning in League of Legends as to like an enemy warning it. You might miss it because it's tiny on your little mini map and you're in the middle of combat. So it can make it big and on your screen and you won't miss it, right? So it's like a little aid and you're like, yeah, that's a little cheesy. That's not really built into the game mechanics. I don't like it that much. And that's like the tip of the iceberg for what it's capable of. They mentioned all kinds of crazy stuff. And they also mentioned that users can train it too. So rather than having to like download a plugin or cheat software for the monitor, you could potentially train it yourself to be like, oh, okay, like when I hear footsteps from here, it can do positional audio and tell me where the enemies are in PUBG or something like that. It looks like it could be the end of, well, it looks almost impossible to actually trace these cheats, right? Because it's a hardware cheat that is not going through the system. It's in your
monitor, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So
do you have an example? Because on the one hand, it could very well make it much more difficult to identify cheaters, and more people could start to use this as an assist to give them that little bit of an edge. But the League of Legends I thought was a really good example, because as you said, it just takes what you found. It looks at your mini map, and if something shows up on your mini map, it will pop up on your screen like, hey, there might be a guy over here, right? Like, you know, there might be a dude in this brush that you missed because you weren't looking at your mini map at that time. And that's a little bit more than they normally got, but it was just information that was readily available in the game. So if you were good and you were constantly looking at the mini map and paying attention, it doesn't do anything for you.
So that's a totally fair point. The crazy thing though is that when we apply AI computer technology to information that is available, you can do a lot more. Like there was a paper written on Counter-Strike Go or Counter-Strike Source. I can't remember which Counter-Strike, but it was about how you could actually determine an enemy's position based on like interpreting their VoIP chat or something like that, where like based on the background frequency, it would fluctuate depending on where you are on the map. And so using computer algorithms and chips, you could build a program that would tell you exactly where a player was based on that alone. Right. So that is information that's relatively available, but the human brain can't take that data and be like, I know what that means. So one of the easier to understand examples is just positional audio. We use our brain to figure out where somebody is and approximate where they are. The AI chips could give you exact pinpoint locations.
So how exactly would that look? Have they given any examples? Because if I play Escape from Tarkov and I hear some footsteps, I have a general idea of where they are. But is this going to be straight up be like, hey, we're going to put like a simulated
I assume
image.
It would look similar to a cheat thing. Well, so obviously MSI is not showing the example because they don't want to just publicly broadcast that this is the cheat monitor. But it basically it is not hard to see people being able to develop that, because it seems capable of doing all the stuff that normal cheat software is already doing, but in a hardware package that is not tied into your PC. So yeah, it's just kind of alarming stuff. It seems like we're entering a new phase of the cheat Cold War, and I don't see any easy way to defeat it, especially when hardware-based cheats would have otherwise been sold by these devious, shitty companies in like China and whatever, and you'd buy something from them, and maybe you'd get it, maybe you wouldn't, maybe they'd scam you. Now it's coming from MSI, a giant manufacturer, and all you got to do is like go to a website and be like, download this cheat thing, or I'll train it myself and make a really high-end cheat for it. So it's opened up Pandora's box, and I don't know what the solution is, because I don't see any way going back.
I mean, I feel like we might be jumping into conclusions, because it really is going to depend on like how the monitor. I mean, this is like the first step, right? So even like let's say in 5 years, it could be even crazier, and then it's just yeah, it's literally just being able to use essentially a wall hack because you can take the sound information the game is telling you, and then just extrapolate their exact position, and then the monitor will just tell you, right? Like I get that could be a possibility,
Yeah,
but I don't know. That is worrisome for sure.
it's like take PUBG or that other extraction shooter, the Bayou one.
Hunt Showdown.
Hunt Showdown. A lot of those games are based on figuring out the distance that a shot came from, and then knowing what type of weapon it is, and then if there's a firefight. This type of AI could very easily tell you all the guns that were used in a firefight, how far away they are, use the amount of weapons and the rate at which they were being fired to probably tell you how many players are engaged in that firefight, and probably down to like within a couple of meters or something where they are.
That's actually a really good point, because like instead of it being, it could just tell you like, hey, this gunshot. It doesn't even have to show you like where they are, right? It could just be like, hey, this shot was 300 meters out, because just based off of the audio of it, it's 300 meters. It was this weapon, and then you go into that battle.
But it'd be pretty easy for it to also say you're turning while the shot occurs. And even if you're not turning, it should be able to approximate the exact degree that it came from. So if it can determine distance and direction, now you have an exact location of where somebody was. They could literally pop it up on your mini map or something, you know?
Yeah. It is worrisome. I'm kind of hoping that it will just be more of an assistance like Fortnite. Fortnite has their audio system where have you played that at all?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, the audio assistance.
Right. It will tell you the direction of where someone is.
Every game will have that, whether or not the game designers want you to have it.
Right. And it's one of the reasons, one thing I don't actually like about Fortnite is that everyone uses it, and it feels like you need to have it on to be competitive, because you may have missed the little bit of like the little football, or not football, the footstep audio, but the game didn't miss it, and it puts it up there for you. So if you didn't have it, you wouldn't have heard, but now you see it visually in front of you.
Exactly.
So it really is very helpful, and pretty much everyone I think that uses competitively, it's kind of like needed.
It's taking that, you know how most gaming monitors now have a little crosshair or a dot you can put in the middle of the screen as like a little monitor aid, and people do it in like Tarkov, right? Because you don't have any crosshairs for hipfire, but hipfire is an important element of the game if you're in CQB, right? So like people just turn it on their monitors, and it's almost become just widely accepted that that's what everybody's doing anyway.
Oh, okay.
This is just going to be an extrapolation of that, right? It's like, well, okay, it's whatever. It's just a dot in the center of your screen. Anybody can do that, and whatever. This is going to be like, well, okay, it's just a little audio assistance. It's just telling me kind of the direction of the footsteps. It's just warning me that I missed a footstep off to the left. It's just telling me the exact distance and location of an enemy based on sound, which I would probably have been able to figure out anyway. It's just
it's literally just showing me their position through the wall. Like, don't worry about it, you know? No, I hear you, man.
I know you're trying to like defend it, but I don't see this going any other way than just basically
I wouldn't say I'm trying to defend it. It's more of I want this to be more of a wait and see, because it could be terrible, but we could also be jumping the gun.
Yeah. I think it's gonna be terrible, dude. I don't see any way around it. I'm sort of like, all right, so what good single player games are coming out?
Yeah, hey, that's why single player games are great.
They are great. Hey, man, EA says there's no money in them, so I think they're going away. But
they'll be gone forever. Yeah,
God, that quote's never gonna. They're never gonna live down that stupid thing.
It's been a long time too since that quote.
Yeah. Did you see that? God, who's suing who now? Take-Two is suing Remedy Games for the R logo.
Yeah, they don't even look the same. It's just
the dumbest lawsuit of all time.
What a stupid thing to get like.
We have an R in our logo. I mean, I have an L in my logo. Should I sue everybody with an L? Somebody pointed out that my logo is almost identical to Little Caesars Pizza. I'm like, oh man. They have like a little Caesars.
There's no shot. Let me Little Caesars Pizza logo. No shot.
I don't know.
No, it doesn't.
There's a version of it.
Okay. It's like, that's the logo I remember. It looks normal to me.
I swear, I think they might have done a Little Caesar collab with, oh, here it is. It's Call of Duty.
Little Caesar logo Call of Duty?
Yeah, type that in. Little Caesar's logo Call of Duty, and you'll see my logo there. They made a Little Caesar logo that looks just like mine.
LevelCap. Okay, now I see it. Yeah, the LC. Yeah. That's not your fault though. That's them.
Yeah, well, also I don't really care. Right?
Yeah.
I'm just like, whatever. They're not trying to assume my thing. But yeah, the Rockstar Remedy thing is insane to me. It's just like,
they don't look the same at all. Like, it doesn't look like the same logo.
Yeah. And also, yeah, it's just like there'd be a case if you were trying to steal sales or exposure by people thinking you were the other thing. That's going to be impossible to prove in a court of law. It's like,
it's also, they're both well-established companies. It's not,
yeah. We both start with an R. I'm suing you.
Yeah. No, it's dumb.
Yeah.
Companies, I mean, I get, so you have to protect your copyright, and if you don't protect your copyright, like, you can run into your own, like, that can cause its own problems. But at the same time, companies go a little buck wild with this.
Well, they've gone nuts with it, especially in the States where, like, was it Apple files like a stupid amount of patents every year on stuff that they're not using, they'll probably never use, whatever. It's just this like,
just so they have
legal Cold War that every major company's playing against each other. They patented like putting a logo, searing a logo on like a cooked piece of meat or some crazy shit like that. And you're just like, what are you guys doing? Stop it. Yeah, exactly. So they could sue somebody who tried to do it. I don't know. Like, it's
I have
insanity.
a friend who works in that world, and they literally were incentivized to come up with patents that they would basically, the company would just own. It's like, wait a second, you give them your patent, essentially, what? They get like a little bonus for it. It seems really scummy too. Yeah. And so they just own all, like, these giant companies just own so many of these random patents because maybe one day,
easily abused system, because clearly it was designed to protect something you invented or are going to use to use. Yeah, you're planning to use it in an upcoming product, and you don't want somebody to like steal your idea and then screw over your whole production. But they're just like, well, I don't know, what if you made a wheel that did this crazy thing, and then they patent it, and you're like, you're not doing that though. Like, now if somebody else tries to do it, you're gonna be like, pay us $1 million. It's ours. Yeah. You're like, okay, you didn't do any of the work, you bastard.
Doesn't sound like innovation. Sounds like corporate greed, as capitalism is.
It is what it is, man. Speaking of capitalism, oh man. Yeah.
Go for it.
No, okay.
I was gonna go back to Palworld, so if you want to move on from Palworld.
No more Palworld. I can't.
Well, it's because the whole Nintendo AI thing is a component of it, and so it's kind of related to what we were just talking about. But if you don't want to go that route, it's okay.
I was gonna bring up your thing, the Valve $1 billion.
Oh yes, yeah, we could talk about that too.
Yeah. So speaking of capitalism, how much do you think Valve made from selling CSGO cases last year?
Well, so it was a headline. I didn't look too deeply into it, but
BS.
it was apparently
according to data. This isn't an official statement from Valve, because they would never tell you what they made. But
they made $1 billion.
On people just trying to get their little knife skins or whatever, man.
Yeah. God, it's so gross. I don't know how Valve. I don't know, because like they're like the one company that has been able to get away with it.
Yeah.
Like there's other, like EA does have their EA Sports stuff where they have gambling too, but
they've been slapped around. Like the European Union, I think, has really hammered EA with their
as they should,
their loot crates with FIFA and all that stuff. Whatever they do with that. Yeah, it's become like it's become labeled as gambling in a lot of countries. It is. It's very predatory stuff, and it certainly makes a lot of money from people who are vulnerable to addictive tendencies, Yeah. But yeah, the loot crate thing, this Counter-Strike skin thing is wild. They sort of get a pass because they're sold on gray markets. That Valve is like, we're not dealing. We don't have anything to do with that and the gray market skin selling thing, but have you seen the prices for some of those skins on the gray market?
Oh yeah, they're unbelievable.
Insane, like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like,
yeah, it's stupid.
It's so crazy. I know.
They're not. There's no way.
I remember making fun of Brandon when he was like buying Counter-Strike skins for like $1,000 or something like that years ago. Yeah, but the thing is now that shit is worth like 100 times what it was, and I'm like, shit, I should have bought some Counter-Strike skins for $1,000.
They're basically NFTs, is what they are.
They are. They're NFTs before NFTs were coined, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's pretty funny. Yeah, and people are like, we're inventing NFTs. And you're like, no, you're not. Like, they already exist.
Right. And it helps that Counter-Strike has gained in popularity, and that popularity has improved the price. So if Counter-Strike just died, all of those skins would be worthless. Yeah, pretty much.
Just like any other NFT concept ever, which is like, it has no value outside of the product or the world that you've created to support it. And lucky for Counter-Strike, I mean, they've really solidified themselves as like, they are like the esport. Like, they're not going anywhere. They're, as long as they don't massively screw up their own game, which they seem to be very careful about not doing. They very much, every update is like, we tweaked this one thing, and then the whole community like debates about it for like months on end, you know, but they don't really change much.
They don't change anything.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're just like, I don't know, don't tweak it.
What I find gross is that it is purely propped up by Valve, and they could change it whenever they want to. They won't, because that will destroy the market, and they will destroy the confidence in the value of these skins. But there's no reason for the skin to cost $1,000. There's no reason for it to cost $100.
Well, like, it's literally it's the value that we assign to it. It's just like cryptocurrency, right? And that a Bitcoin isn't worth 60 grand or wasn't, or whatever,
like,
you know?
Bitcoins, I'm really pretty naive on it.
Well,
but
it's
like,
it's all the same stuff, right? Like, we're putting the value on it. Like, it doesn't actually,
we're putting the value on it, but it's also because Valve puts a rarity on the skin. Like, if they just gave everyone Dragunovs, right, like for free, Dragunov would plummet, and they could, I don't know if they can do that. There's some reasons why certain skins are not like, you can't get them anymore, because I think there was like a reason for it. But like, a lot of those really expensive skins, you could easily just increase the drop rate by, you know, triple, quadruple, and now it's like, now I can appreciate and I can enjoy it.
Basically like create inflation for skins if they wanted to, but I think part of the stability of the skin market is that Valve doesn't mess with it. It comes out, here's the drop rate, and they don't change it. And people are like,
it's so sweet. Like, it's so gross. Like, that's what upsets me.
If you were a giant, so let's play devil's advocate for a second. Say you invented Counter-Strike and you were head of the Counter-Strike team, and you're like, and somebody suggested loot crates forever ago, and you're like, sure, whatever. That it seems innocent enough, right? People can have skin crates. So all of a sudden, this giant economy builds up around your skin crates. Do you then go, this is having a bad effect on people, I'm going to hit the delete button? Or do you just let it go? Like, obviously
they let it go because it's making them an unbelievable amount of money, but I can still find it to be gross that they're the reason why it's going that direction.
I mean, people are the reason also, right? People have created these skin economies that Valve didn't create a money marketplace for this necessarily. They did,
though, by keeping the rarity so high.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I like the idea.
Let's say every skin.
Well, it's like, I like World of Warcraft in the sense of there's certain items that are crazy rare, right? And if you see them, you're like, holy crap, that guy's got a whatever, sort of 1,000 suns, you know?
But is it $1,000 or $500 rare?
Yeah. Right.
That's my point, right? I just feel like
people are willing to pay for it, and for whatever reason, people are willing to pay 100 grand for a Dragunov thing. Yeah. Oh, I'm not saying you're in the wrong. I'm just saying people are crazy. Like, I can't figure it out.
You see where I'm coming from, though, that like this is not just the gray market. This is not just people. This is also Valve. At the core, they're the reason why these skins are so expensive, because they're the ones that set the rarity for these skins, and if they weren't so rare, if it wasn't a 0.1% chance to get a whatever,
okay, I get what you're saying.
It wouldn't be.
They did
it would
make them
be nowhere near as
rare.
lucrative.
It's not like a thing where if we just play Counter-Strike for like 1,000 hours, we'll eventually get a Dragon.
We'll eventually get it. You will not get it.
Yeah.
That's my point.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point.
Okay.
I do still kind of like the concept of it, just because if you see it, it has that like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen one. It's like seeing a really nice car when you're driving down. You're like, holy crap, is that a? I don't know what nice cars are.
Is that a Lambo?
Yeah, those aren't even that rare anymore. You see them around,
Not where I reside.
Not in your neck of the woods. You see like a horse and carriage.
Bugattis.
Yeah.
You guys got some Bugattis or something? Those are like $1 million cars.
Yeah, that's the Citron or Citron. Is that it? The crazy. I don't know. We know our car stuff. Let's turn it into a car podcast.
There we go.
We know our stuff. Have you seen the one with 4 wheels? It's pretty cool.
Damn.
Yeah. So I got some sad news for me in my neck of the gaming world is that Stalker 2 got pushed back to September. Oh,
yeah,
God damn it.
It feels bad.
It was supposed to be a Q1 launch. I mean, initially it was supposed to be a last year launch.
Last year, yeah.
Then it got pushed to a Q1 launch, and now it's September.
Well, when there's a conflict on the other side of the world, and they're kind of in the middle of it to some extent, I can see why they might be delaying.
You're such a politician, Matt. You're like, let's
what? Because I realize the situation.
Just be a gamer and complain about.
Oh man, it sucks so bad. These devs need to get me back in the office. Mm-hmm.
I'm on board with the Stalker 2 train. Whenever the game launches, I'll be playing it on launch day. I'm very excited for it, but it is, it's a blow when you're like, oh, we're getting it this quarter, baby.
We're getting close.
Yeah. And then you're like, September, boom.
I think they said that this is the final delay though, that this is like a hard release date. So, that kind of reassuring, but we've also had games that are actually coming out soon. Skull and Bones that has had 25,000 delays. So who knows if they're going to have a similar.
I know they're competing. Treatment. They're competing with Star Citizen for most delayed game.
Yeah.
Star Citizen's going to launch before it, and then they'll be like, "Haha, we're not the most delayed game ever." Meme is over.
So I do think Skull and Bones is actually coming out in February.
Yeah. I've the hype for that game for me. I think I lost hype for it like years ago. Where like,
I don't think there's any hype for it.
The concept, I was like, this is cool. And then it just kind of, after a while, I was like, all right.
I'll be playing it. I think we talked about this a while ago, where I played the beta, and it was fun for what it was. And I'd like to sail the high seas, and I want to pillage, and it could be enjoyable for a while.
Yeah.
I don't have high hopes for the longevity of it, though.
But Ubisoft never surprises me these days. All their titles seem to be exactly what you expect they're going to be. And sometimes they're competent.
Though you say that, and Prince of Persia just released, and it's pretty good.
That statement would have been great a couple of weeks ago. God damn it, Prince of Persia.
Damn it, Prince of Persia, with your quality gameplay and puzzles.
Yeah. So have you heard about NVIDIA Remix at all? Do you know what that is?
Yeah, that's the one. I think we talked about this before, where it can create uses like AI to like make textures and stuff. Yeah.
Well, I think it launched today officially.
So cool. So now anyone can take advantage of it?
Anybody can take advantage of it, Matt. And I think we're gonna be seeing a lot of like pretty competent remixes of old titles that look good. It seems it's geared perfectly for anyone listening who doesn't know what we're talking about. It's this new NVIDIA software or process anyway, using, I guess, NVIDIA GPUs to replace assets, textures, materials, lighting in old games. We're talking games from like you could do it in any game, but probably best used in older games from like the 2000s, and give them like ray trace lighting and like textures with bump mapping and depth to them and all kinds of advanced shaders. And they did a really impressive demo on think it was like Morrowind or something, one of the old Elder Scrolls games that's very, very low poly, and all of a sudden it started to look good. Like not modern good, but very, very
still
much
better
improved.
than what it was. Yeah.
And they showed how like it can get as good as you want it to, as much time as you put into it, where you can do a quick texture pass and now all of your low poly models have really nice textures, but you still see the wheel that's got 6 sides to it, right? So then you want to spend a little more time and you want to replace the wheel with a high poly wheel. And then you spend a little more time and you replace the characters with higher poly character. Like there seems to be not too many limitations in terms of how far you want to take it. So it's almost like a perfect platform for doing like a really good remix without having to open up the original engine code to a really deep level and figure out how they made the game and replace all these assets in a more manual way. I don't totally understand how all of it works, but
it's magic.
The demos they showed are like guys doing remixes of games in a day or something.
That's crazy.
Like, yeah, you're like, what the hell?
That's nuts.
Yeah, because it pulls from AI texture libraries and stuff where they're just like, what would old marble look like in super high resolution? They give it like a super low res texture from Morrowind and it like upscales it like 50 times. And you're like, holy crap, that looks amazing.
Right.
So it's cool stuff. Cool. Yeah. So it's out. So I think we're going to start in the next couple of months. We're going to see some crazy stuff.
Yeah, but you know, I still think it's gonna be niche. Like it's really cool, but I don't know how many people are gonna take advantage of it in the long term. It's more of just like, hey, this is a really cool project. We can maybe apply that to other things in our workflow.
What if Battlefield 3 got a remix and all of a sudden it looked as good as like?
Okay, all right.
Yeah, right.
Okay, that would be cool. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Granted, I don't know how that would work in a multiplayer setting, but
yeah, I think you'd get banned for cheating, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. They already have some weird mod stuff for BF3, like the I forgot what it was called, but they made
Project Reality came out and didn't go anywhere. No, they do have.
It is weird Unleashed. To me that there's so many.
Unleashed.
That's it. That's what it's called. Yeah, that project is neat, but it also confused me why people are spending so much time on BF3 because I'm like, it's pretty old. Maybe you should have done it for
I feel like
a modern engine.
Its backbone isn't really up to modern standards because Battlefield 3's was a great game. One of the best Battlefields in my opinion, but its netcode and like the actual
it shows its age when you load it back up. You're like, okay, like the spray on these weapons is pretty weird.
Yeah.
Pretty old and janky. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then the Venice Unleashed thing originally came out, and then they finally were doing like a Project Reality for Battlefield 3, which was supposed to be attuned to like old school like Battlefield 2 days where they had their Project Reality to try to make it more realistic and tactical. And the servers exploded and all hype died for me and I think a lot of people because it's just like, this is terrible. Like it's terrible. And they kind of had their shot, and I feel like they kind of, they whiffed a bit. But it's just people trying to make mods. They're not getting money for it.
Sure. Yeah, and it's the Milsim world, which I think is one of the weirder gaming niches because they're so obsessed with recreating certain things to be as authentic as possible, and they're like, gameplay is a distant second to this working the way it works in real life. And so any normal gamer boots it up and is just like, why do I have to press 10 buttons to do something basic in the game?
Because in real life I don't have to press 10 buttons. I do it naturally.
Do you not want 10 different ways to crouch and in your stances? Do you want your gun partially ready and more ready and all the way ready but then kind of not ready? You need 7 of those at least, Matt.
Like, no, you don't. No, you don't.
Yeah, I don't quite have the appeal for it either, but I can't appreciate games that look and feel authentic. I just don't want to.
That's what I'm more interested in, is the authenticity. That's kind of the theme you may have noticed over the years is love authenticity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because I think it applies more because everyone likes to go, it's realistic. Who cares? I'm not playing a video game for realism. When I get shot, I don't want to feel the shot. I want it to feel authentic.
Matt, you should wear a vest. You should wear an electric.
There are vests.
I know. God,
there are.
Why do people do this stuff?
Yeah. I saw a commercial for it and it was like, oh man, it feels like I'm there. I'm like, really? Okay.
Well,
All
what
right.
if it gave you the exact? You could tell where you're getting shot in the back from, and you're like, that
cool.
shot
Like, it'd
came
be
from
kind of
45 degrees.
cool.
Yeah.
Especially if you're doing like VR, but at the same
Yeah.
time, like I don't want to feel like I'm getting shot.
You just dial it down. The hardcore players are like, "What's your vest setting at?
Yeah, they're just getting
2?
like punched in the back.
Yeah, let me. Mine's dialed up to 11. I die. I die if I get
hardest
shot.
of hardcore.
Yeah.
I mean, it would incentivize you to not get, hit ever. Like that would really change. Like if it actually hurt, if you got hit in that in a
You
game,
just play it like Tarkov and just be in a bush the whole time.
I would be I'm already a rat in Tarkov. I would
Yeah.
be the biggest rat.
What do you
For
do
sure.
on your stream? Are you just like in a bush and you're just chatting with people? And you're just like, how's it going?
Well, no.
What do you
So
guys
when I stream Tarkov, I take it slow. Like I'm wandering around. But if I hear movement, I immediately, and this is true for a lot of people. You hear movement, crouch, wait,
Yeah,
listen.
sure.
and just hope that they didn't hear you. And then if they walk past, you got a free kill. But if they also heard you because they're using the headsets too, they probably did the exact same thing. And so now it's just two people crouched in a corner.
Just like, and then slowly backing away.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's one critique that people have right now for the game is that you're incentivized with the very fast time to kill and the accuracy of the weapons is that if you hear someone, just rat it up, because if they didn't hear you, like you're gonna have a really big advantage.
Yep.
Yeah.
My favorite kind of gameplay. Just kidding. Yeah.
Rat. I did come across someone who was, there's extracts in the game where you have to leave the map, and there's a strategy where you extract camp.
Yeah.
And I went against someone who was at one of the extracts underneath the car that was by the extract.
Yeah.
And he took me out. And it doesn't feel good because you just spend a lot of time gathering.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I extracted.
You're like, I'm
and you
home free. Yeah.
And his name was the Rat King.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, good. And he had like 2,000 hours in the game. I'm like, bro, seriously? This is how you're going to play? Like, fair enough. You do you, I guess.
Yeah. I can't do it. I can't do it sometimes. I want to love games like Hunt Showdown, and then some dude's just like in a bush, and you can't see him. Like I've watched footage back, and I'm like, I can't see the guy.
Yeah,
I'm looking where the shot comes from. I'm just like, don't know. He's wearing a bush in a bush.
Incredible audio though, and it's
So
very
good.
hard to make no noise in that game unless you are literally not moving at all. Like if you have your headset on and and they're crouching and they're walking around, you can hear that. So there's no way for them to just go like completely remove the audio.
Yeah.
Which is nice. So if you
pretty cool.
just listen, you can usually hear where people are. So it's hard to get that that shot, that stealthy, completely stealthy play style off, but I do hear you. It can get very.
I'm gonna give ratting another
down.
try. I think when Gray Zone starts doing some public tests and stuff like that, because that one looks cool. Yeah. The bigger world appeals to me a lot, because then it probably lessens the usual spots and the spots that people are like. Having one choke pointy extraction zone is very easy to camp and annoying. So it seems like Gray Zone's going to lead more to like trying to cut people off, see where they're going, and then try and get in front of them somehow, or something like, or just having to have a more legitimate, like, hey, they're trying to get away. I'm just going to try and shoot them, and now we're in a firefight, as opposed to.
I heard one thing that I'm hoping that they do is incentivize group play and not punish people who get taken out while playing with friends. I don't know if maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is another game, but you will be able to, like, if your teammate dies, right, you can go over and revive them. You go through an extensive process and go through a lot of animations like in Tarkov, but you can then bring them back so that they're
open heart surgery.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Like it's going to take a long time, but if you've cleared everything and the coast is clear, you can then go on in and be like, hey, your game session is not over anymore. And you don't just have to listen to us having a good time. You can join back and play with us, and
fantastic. Let's make it a game that's fun to play with friends, so it's like it's perfect, right? Because you don't want somebody to be able to be completely revived in the middle of a firefight, and then you're like, didn't we just drop that guy? He's back up and fighting us again. That's really annoying. So you create the situation in which you can slowly whittle down your opponents and then take them out, but whoever wins gets to get all their teammates back,
Right.
Makes sense. I like it. It's perfect.
Yeah. Go on.
I was gonna say, you've been watching anything good lately? I know you enjoyed Reacher season 2 a lot.
Apparently, I'm one of the few people that didn't really enjoy that episode.
No, I've seen some articles online that were like, Reacher season 2 was like the worst thing I've ever seen.
I don't know if I go that far. It was wrong.
I don't know. But if Jason's in chat, he's gonna lose it because he's like, Jack Reacher.
I have been watching For All Mankind. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I watched all of season 2. Okay. I watched season 1 like a year ago or 2 years ago. Really liked it, but for some reason just didn't continue on with the seasons. So I'm on finished all season 2. I'm like halfway or third of the way through season 3, and it's a fun alternate history space race that never stopped show, and I love it. Little melodramatic at times with some of the characters' relation. It's Apple TV. Yeah,
I'm gonna check it out. We're like 2 seconds away. We're watching our last Netflix show, and then we're gonna switch over to Apple TV, and then I'm gonna binge all of that stuff.
You've got a lot of great shows. I'm not a big fan of Apple as a company, but their catalog's pretty great for their shows. They've got a lot of good stuff.
I know I want to watch that Tetris movie, but it's only on Apple TV. So I'm like,
I haven't seen that one.
It looks good. It's like about the guy who invented Tetris. And apparently it's a pretty interesting, I did read up on it a while back, and it is an interesting story because I think somebody's going to correct me on this, but he invented it where, like, basically because he invented it in a communist country, the rights of Tetris belong to the state or something like that. So yeah, it really screwed up like his ownership and distribution of the game and all this stuff. But yeah, I kind of want to watch the movie to get all the facts on it. I've been watching a show on Netflix called Boy Swallows Universe, and it's a very interesting show.
That's a weird one.
It's based on a book, I believe, and it's weird because it's kind of got this sort of fun, almost adorable at times, coming of age vibe, but it's also extremely dark and about like heroin drug dealing. And it somehow mixes them together, and it's good. I'm a couple episodes in, and it's quite good.
Wow.
Yeah. You know.
Never heard of it though.
Yeah, it takes place in Australia, so it's got all the fun accents and stuff, you know, crikey. That kind of stuff. Okay. All right. Yeah.
Nice.
That's my recommendation. I haven't watched too much. I watched some stand-up, you know, here or there.
Yeah. I've been doing a little bit of reading. Read a book called Farlane. It was all right. It's like a series that I've read for a while. It's like one of those books that doesn't feel like it earns its emotional. You know, when it's supposed to be emotional, it's like emotional, but it's like you didn't really earn this. Like the way you did it felt a little bit manipulative, and it was kind of like one of those books where it's like, I liked it, but
yeah, that's a lot of modern TV nowadays too, where they're just like, this is the sad part, and you're like, I'm not sad. Like these characters,
I'm not sad.
Yeah, these characters annoyed me for the past 3 episodes. I'm kind of glad that one's dying now.
I'm glad they're dead. Yeah. I'll say it. I'm glad old Jimmy's dead.
If he dies, he dies.
He dies. He dies.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I won't read that book then.
I didn't think you would. It's also very strange because the author claims that it can be a standalone book, but it makes so many references to another series that he's written. I'm like, you would just not know what's going on. Like it would be terrible. You know, when they reference past history in a book and you're like, oh, well, that's cool. Like, I don't know what this means. Well, he does that all the time because it's referencing an entire book series that he wrote. And but he just does it all the time. I'm like, you would not know anything of what's going on.
So it's like, if you didn't read my last book, you might want to pick that up. You know, it's like 1,000 ads for the previous book. Yeah. I've been doing a little bit of, I wouldn't say creative writing, but I've been having to come up with like names for lore elements in my game project.
Your game. Okay. I was like, you're going to pick up a book now? You're working on a game? You got a YouTube channel, a podcast?
No,
like, what more?
If I did that, I would expect you to sort of intervene, Matt. At that point, I'd be like, okay, there needs to be an intervention.
Yes.
This is too
much on your plate.
No, I've been, because I mean, you gotta start coming up with names and things, because I have an idea for what the world is, but once you try and put it on paper, you're like, crap, I got to think of actual names and like reasons why things have names. And it's been pretty helpful. AI.
Damn it.
I haven't been using ChatGPT. I've been using Google Bard, which I think is superior.
Okay.
But
you're like, hey, I want Eastern European names, something like that.
No, actually, it's you could say that, but what I found useful is like, for example, the demo level I'm building has a magma planet, a lava planet, right?
Okay.
And I'm like, I need a cool name for something. I need a cool name for a planet that's like molten or fire or whatever. And it starts throwing stuff my way. And while the first batch of things might not be what I want, it gives me an idea. I'm like, okay, well, it'll be like, here's a word that comes from the Latin root of whatever. And then the next question will be like, give me a bunch of words that mean fire or lava in Greek and Latin and blah, blah, blah. And it starts throwing all these names out there. And I'm like, oh man, this is quick. Like all of a sudden I can start making names for things relatively quickly that have a root in the meaning that I want it to have, which is cool. I don't know, just so really
it's basically
useful tool.
It's just a tool used to search things in a slightly faster way. It's like instead of just Googling everything.
Yeah, it's a smart thesaurus, but beyond just a thesaurus, you know.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I find that useful. I know I'm going to get all the hate for like, oh, you used AI to make a thing. But what's funny
I don't think AI is the devil.
No, it's not. And I've been chatting with other game developers about this, which is interesting because if you look at how all multimedia tools evolve, is that they all just become easier to do the thing that you did before. Where before, if you were making drop shadow in Photoshop, there wasn't like an automatic drop shadow button. You had to like duplicate the text and then put it behind it and turn it black and move it around. And now there's just a drop shadow button. And so it's just like, okay, there's one tool that does the thing that you needed before. I think a lot of the AI tools could be wrapped up in a similar package or a similar framework as that, in that they sort of do what you did before, which is like, okay, I had to Google a bunch of stuff and jump around some websites and open up a thesaurus and then finally get to it. And this is just kind of condensing that process to, a couple of minutes rather than 10, 15 minutes.
Nice.
Yeah. I don't know. It's cool though. I think it's neat. It's helping me make some progress a lot faster than I thought I was going to.
Sounds like fun.
I'm not good at that.
Those creative juices flowing.
Yeah. I'm good at the visual stuff. Audio, man. I don't know anything.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
I'm like, that's a gunshot sound. They're like, good job. Naming, yeah, I don't know, man. You want to wrap the pod up there?
We can, yeah.
Unless you got something else you want. You're looking off screen. What's going on over there, Matt? You something?
Just checking out my pals.
Your DMs? Oh, your pal. Yeah. You got some hot DMs going on over there. You're like, ooh.
Yeah.
Who's this?
Ooh.
Who's this saucy lady?
I had a friend who messaged me and he uses he changes his picture all the time. And he changed it to like a very attractive woman. And so when he messaged me, I was like, oh,
yeah, you're like,
attractive lady has slipped into my DMs. I was like, oh, it's just, which I was excited because he's a good guy, I was like, oh, that's not.
Yeah. It's not the same kind of excitement. Sort of like,
a little different.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For once I maybe thought I had game, and then I realized that nope, I'm still me.
Yeah. Well, I think that brings us around to talking about the point of the podcast here, which is to find a special someone for Matimi0.
This was the point of the podcast. Yes, of course, the entire time. This is the point.
Well, I mean, it's a good point to bring up our Patreon, because when people subscribe to our Patreon, not only do they get to watch the podcast live, but the money coming from that Patreon goes to buying Matimi0 a mail order bride from that's not third world country.
No, you don't do that.
I've got a list they're getting hotter and hotter with the more money that comes in. We talked about how many teeth they had last time. We almost have a full set of teeth, Matt. Okay. I mean, so anybody out there who wants to become a Patreon member and watch our podcast live and hop on the Discord and give us subjects, We appreciate it very much. There'll be a link to that in the video description.
Mm-hmm.
And one day we'll be able to order that smoking hot babe from some...
That's so terrible, Level.
Okay, Mr. Whip your pals into shape, you know. We gotta find new ways to motivate these.
That is completely different.
We'll be back next week with more mail order brides and enslaving your cartoon animals to talk about. I'm sure there'll be something crazy going on. Thank you guys for watching the podcast. We hope you've enjoyed it. Check us out on all the other podcast platforms and whatnot. There's links and all that kind of stuff in the description. Check them out. And Matt will leave us with some words of wisdom.
Oh yes, my words of wisdom.
Yeah, which he is prepared for.
Which I prepared for in my book, Words of Wisdom. So I have here a quote from Olivia Newton-John. Once you face your fear, nothing is ever as hard as you think. I swear to God, you can't judge my quotes. Have you ever gone onto a quote?
You found the quote.
You want me to come up with quotes myself?
No, I'm just saying you called it your quote, and I'm saying it's not really your quote. It's Olivia's quote.
Have you ever gone on these dumb websites to look for quotes, like inspirational quotes? They're all terrible.
Yeah.
They're terrible.
It sounds like a nightmare, to be honest.
It's a nightmare. Why do you make me do this?
Because it's fun. People need advice to go on with their lives.
All right, I'm just gonna start giving like really basic advice, like sleep 8 hours a night.
That wasn't basic. Yeah, actually, that would be better, to be honest, because that one.
All right. So my advice, my wisdom: get at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night and drink plenty of water.
It's good advice. Good advice. You're welcome, everybody.
That's what I'm gonna start doing.
You're welcome, everybody. This is what Patreon pays for right here. Is the life-changing advice. Matimi0 is the next Tony Robbins. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.